The real story of the final WWF show. Let's watch.
On May 5th, 2002, history was made as the WWF would hold its last show, becoming the WWE. And that event was held here at the DCU Center in Worcester, Massachusetts, formerly known as the Centrum. And I was lucky enough to be on that final show.
Oh my god, it feels like a documentary or something. Like, it's kind of cool.
For those of you who aren't familiar with the name change, the World Wildlife Fund actually had the legal right to the acronym WWF. However, at the time, WWF.com took you to a wrestling site. And this was not acceptable from the World Wildlife Fund. They wanted to actually be able to use the acronym that they legally owned. They wanted for people to type in WWF.com and go to their website.
Damn.
And at the time, there wasn't many of us that thought they would pose a big challenge. Oh, were we wrong.
So y'all blocking out that good cause that they trying to push by taking us to wrestlers beating up each other.
So how did the guys backstage feel about the name change?
Stuff.
Well, from what my memory serves, we thought World Wrestling Entertainment had a very uphill battle, but that was only because everyone knew and everyone thought of wrestling as WWF. WWF was actually branded. When you heard that title at the time, you thought immediately of wrestling. Well, that is, unless you were with the World Wildlife Fund. But what did that mean? How were we supposed to react? If you had a branded shirt with a logo on it that had WWF anywhere, and in those days, they would have the crest usually in the middle, they were a no-go moving forward. So we went one day being able to wear anything, and the next day being held to a very high standard. And they wanted the name change. They wanted the change to be immediate. They weren't about to allow anything, and I mean anything, with that WWF branded logo moving forward after tonight. Now, even though we knew this was a historic show, it was still business as usual. Once we came through that garage, we went down here, found a place for our rental cars, got out, and then went down a hall like that to find our locker room, because the fans that were going to fill this arena, they still came for a show. They still wanted to see amazing wrestling action. They, for the most part, probably could care less about the name change. Remember, a town like this, we were probably in one, maybe twice a year. So just like every other night, we knew we had to bring it. And in this arena, the WWF would come to an end. So my match for the last WWF show that we would ever have, yeah, I wasn't in the main event, and that's fine. I mean, Hulk Hogan was in the main event. But I was in a tag match. I was in a tag match with my trainer, with Al Snow. And remember, at this time, I was terrified still. I was still relatively new. I was still extremely green. And I was fortunate enough to be working with Billy Gunn, who is a legend, and who in 2002 was still a veteran. Billy's partner obviously was Chuck Palumbo, and Palumbo in his own right was still a veteran. Al, my mentor, was going to make sure that two things happened each and every night. One, I was going to get better every night. something was going to improve with my wrestling. And the second thing I was going to be sure of is that I was going to learn something each and every match. And this consisted of, when we went backstage, maybe asking, why I did something, and what I was thinking,
it's a
good
lot
or
going
bad.
on.
Now, this could be Al asking me, why did you cut Billy off during that Hope spot? Me giving my reason and him telling that was good, or maybe you want to do it, at this time. The biggest difference of wrestling in a house show or non-televised event as opposed to wrestling on Raw or SmackDown or a pay-per-view is just the overall attitude of everybody. Everybody at a live event knows they have to be totally on their game. And if you're doing a Raw or pay-per-view, you know that you don't have any do-overs. You know you don't have the luxury of
Editing.
really learning on the fly. Whereas during the house shows or non-televised event, we could go out, we could take calculated risks, but risks nonetheless. And we could just learn as we go. Now, since I had been in a WWF locker room at this time for a while, the heat that I had was fine. They knew I was there for all the right reasons. They knew that although I wasn't a finished or completed product at this time, that as the weeks progressed, I was getting better week after week. But that doesn't mean that I still wasn't nervous. So I was still terrified in every match we had. It didn't matter. I still had that same sinking pit feeling in the bottom of my stomach. And before our music would hit to go out, every match, I still remember thinking, why did I do this? Why am I doing this why did I pick this as a career?
True
and
emotions.
that feeling, I still carry to this day, but that's a feeling that as soon as I go through the curtain, that feeling is gone.
It has to go away because you gotta perform. Wow, it's crazy.
And as we walked out of the locker room as a WWF wrestler for the last time, actually making history, most guys weren't concerned with the name change. In fact, most guys were worried about getting to the next town and figuring out where we were going to eat for the night. For fans leaving this arena that night, it was a sentimental time. They had just witnessed the last show in the WWF's history. But for the boys, for us, it was just another one down and on to the next show. And to see me break down the difference between the Raw and SmackDown locker room, click the link on screen.
I've always wondered, even though I could have Googled it a long time ago, I always wondered why they switched from F to E back then. But that makes so much sense because of that other brand or whatever being under WWF. They don't want them having the same thing because that would literally the traffic would go to World Wrestling Federation. Me personally, I just like how that sounds more. It didn't bother me that they changed it. Plus, I was a kid, so it's like, why would I be so pressed about it? But something about World Wrestling Federation sounds kind of like more cool than World Wrestling Entertainment. But wow, I'm happy that I finally got to understand why they did that. I thought they just did that as like some type of like rebrand or something. I don't know. I thought they were just rebranding and they just wanted to go from Federation to Entertainment just because. But the fact that it was because of another company being under WWF, that makes so much more sense. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this reaction, guys. Make sure to leave some likes and comments down below. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see y'all in the next one.